He was sick.
Really?
Yeah.
He did sound a little raspy this morning, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, the chief said yes.
So we need the chief. Always on his way, shouldn't be home. Time is precious right now. And we'll just catch people if they come in. There's the word.
Are they gonna be on Zoom like, we don't have a screen?
We can turn on the screens if people would like.
Interesting.
We're in here. And okay, well, we'll just go ahead and get started. Call this meeting order at 2:01. We go ahead and start off with introductions. I'm Mike, Mayor of Madras.
I'm Cindy Platter, Bus Care and Treatment Services.
Tony Mitchell, I'm the Executive Director for the Jefferson County Faith-Based Network.
Hello, I'm Nick Sneed. I'm the Community Development Director with City Matters.
Papa Taha, Associate Planner at City of Madras.
Trent Titus, Jefferson County Public Health, Peer Support, Homeless Outreach.
I'm Christy Wester, I'm the Interim City Administrator. City Manager.
Maybe you want to call on the people online to introduce themselves?
I'll start by you, Penny. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Penny with Jefferson County Fire and EMS.
Then Anthony. Black members, do you want to introduce yourself?
We'll just let record reflect who you're here.
So that was Anthony Lansing?
Yeah.
Okay, and.
Oh, apologize. I think my video's.
Introducing yourself.
Well, thank you, Tim Plummer.
Okay. Quick review of the bylaws. Did everybody get those emailed to them?
Yes.
Any questions or concerns, comments on the bylaws?
No, I could also go over and just high level overview.
Please do if you would.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor. So we developed these bylaws. Frankly, in a manner that would serve this advisory committee for a longer period committee, almost a standing committee. So the committees consist of 13 members, but there's 9 voting members. The 9 voting members are the members that constitute quorum or needed for the quorum. Okay. The 4 non-voting members consist of the police sergeant, city police sergeant, city's community development director, city public works director. And so really it's a city staff kind of supporting this advisory committee. The duties of this advisory committee are to advise the city council on homelessness and homeless camping. And it was intended to be broad and just that, so that right now in the immediate future, we have some work we'd like to have the committee help us with. But as we move forward in the future, there will be different issues or different projects for us to serve and seek your input. We do need to elect a chair and vice chair. That needs to be done at the first meeting, so it doesn't need to be done annually, but just the first meeting. However, if there's a change, someone can't serve on the committee otherwise, the chair can facilitate the formal change in that by way of motion. The chair and the vice chair to preside over the meetings, particularly the vice chair. If the chair is absent, they will stand in for the chair. I was telling the mayor that there is required to be minutes for the committee. We've purposely developed those to be electronic or audio files. And so what you'll see is that we'll have Teams or a Zoom meeting on purpose so that we can record the meeting and easily complete that requirement by storing that at City Hall. We're supposed to have one meeting a month. One of our agenda items this afternoon, but I think we probably need to have some more frequently than that in the short term, just to accomplish some of our business. There is a simple majority quorum requirement for formal action. And one way to think about that would be if voting on chair, vice chair, secretary, or maybe making a recommendation to the city council on a particular policy package, whatever it may be, quorum of the 9 voting members would be required. Pardon me, a majority of the 9 voting members would be required. We don't anticipate there to be conflicts of interest, but there is that in there. And that's really it. It's pretty simple, straightforward. Appreciate your interest in this aspect of our community.
Thank you, Nick. Let me say a little about the vision of this when I worked on putting this committee together, so you have an idea of why the agenda is kind of heading in the direction it's going. When I first talked to Dr. Baker about this committee, he asked me if it was my goal to eliminate homelessness. And I told him, well, that's impossible, you're not gonna do that. He agreed. I pointed out from my career, from my profession point of view, I see there's homeless that you see, and then there's homelessness that you don't see. The homelessness that you don't see are the ones that we really wanted to focus on trying to help deliver certain resources to before they become ones that you do see. I know that sounds like a really simplified method of explaining what my view is in that aspect, but being that you're all from the background you're from, I'm sure you'll understand what I mean by that. That although simplified, there's quite a complex situation in each group, right? And so what we were hoping, what I was hoping was the reason that there's so many different disciplines is it gives us a wider reach of resources and ideas. And that will help us pull things together to help with both groups and at the same time help maintain the balance of our regular citizens who live in the community, so they're not also being affected by these issues. Does it make sense? Or it's not that we're trying to make everybody happy, but we're trying to make a balance where the city is still prospering and looking good, and those who need help are getting help. So that's kind of where that came from. The one reason that the Nick's alluding to about things that we need to be quick is there's a time restraint on what to put together an ordinance towards public camping. This has to be done before the end of June. So we already have attorneys that are looking at or providing some examples of things that we're going through. And we have city staff that are reviewing that with them, so we can actually have something that we can present that will look to the council that will look good and be effective. We also know that those can't be enforced until we have a shelter built, but we need to have those in place first by that time. Okay, so I bring that up because I don't want you to think that, gee, that's the mayor's idea, just to ban public camping, and that's the whole thing we did. No, that's just something that's on a time frame, and you know that my feeling is this is a multifaceted issue that we have to address. Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay, so with that said, let's move on to the next topic of the election of officers. Does anybody like to make a motion on who they like for the chair?
Nick Snee, would you like to be the chair?
I'm not a voting member, so I
Yes,
probably
keep
shouldn't be a
that.
chair. Although I appreciate that. That concept. Well, maybe I can explain a little bit more of the way I maybe see the chair position. So staff will be working with the chair to put together the agendas, and staff will be issuing the agendas and the packet material for the meetings. Chair presumably would have input on that, should they want to, but really Mike, maybe I'm wrong, I think it's really just facilitating meetings.
Pretty much.
How many, because I'm really still pretty new and unfamiliar with everybody's face, how many voting members are actually here?
There's two on Zoom.
Who's the other one on Zoom?
Tony and Penny are on Zoom. And then Tony and Cindy, myself, you and Trent.
Everybody knows everybody, so I was just kind of wondering what the delay in consideration for officers, but I understand that, but to me, it's like, I don't know he was supposed to be here, and he's not.
The sheriff is still, he's on his way here, he's running late, but he'll be another voting member.
So I'm not a voting member, but my suggestion might be that you would consider appointing Mayor Lapine, since we would work closely with him in the development of the agenda, and he's regularly in City Hall. And if you had time, if you wanted to have added to the agenda, you could reach out to him or staff to have those included.
So I'll nominate Michael as chair.
Is a motion? Yeah. So there's a second, motion and second, any discussion? All in favor of Mike Lapine as chair?
Right.
Any opposed? Okay. Is there any comment on Zoom?
Tony, do you have comments?
I'm good. Sorry.
Nominations for vice chair.
I nominate my friend next to me.
That would be Dr. Baker. He's representing Dr. Baker.
Oh, well, will Dr. Baker accept that nomination?
I think he should. I would second that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Dr. Baker to be the vice chair. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Trent, would you please inform Dr. Baker that he is now vice chair?
Definitely will.
Welcome, Chair.
Didn't consciously know that I was.
Okay. We, what you missed is just a quick review of the bylaws that you got those emailed to you.
Yes.
Okay, and I've been elected chair and Dr. Baker's been elected vice chair.
You know, he's not here.
Oh, he's like that, or worse than I am.
Yeah. So, oh, here you go.
So in one regard, your timing's impeccable.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, for secretary, you said you weren't a voting member,
I'm happy to do it.
but, okay, so can we have a non-voting member be a secretary?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, so the reason I mentioned that up, is he's the one handling all the reporting, all that, it makes it really easy.
Yes, agreed.
So I'm gonna move that, Nick is our secretary.
I'll second it.
Any second, we have a motion and a second for that, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We now have our officers. Discussion of future committee efforts. I kind of got over that in the very beginning, and Sheriff, I'll just recap. We have, as you're aware from your profession, is there's two basic groups of homeless that we deal with, the ones that we see, like Panasonic, and then the ones you don't see, which are those people don't know how many we have. They're living in their cars or somewhere else and whatnot. And so there's kind of like two different tasks that I see is one is helping those get resources that don't become the ones we do see, and helping find ways to mitigate the ones that we do see. Finding, as Dr. Baker said, some of those people make their choices, and what he does is he sends people there so when they're ready to change the choices, these are the resources that are available to you, and I think that's great. So, but at the same time, right now, we have a time sensitive issue about trying to get ordinance created, which has to be done before the end of June. To ban public camping, and so that's something we're gonna kind of focus on right now to get that out of the way. And then we'll move on to other things that we know these are two very complex groups, which will require two different, multiple faceted, solutions to come deal with those. As well as cultural. Correct. So that's why This group is made up of wide, diverse disciplines because it gives us a wide range of resources and ideas. Okay, review, discussion, city attorney memorandum on time, place, manner, regulations for homeless camping. Nick, did you want to take that?
Yes. I asked the city attorney to just put together a quick memo for the committee so that you would have a general background of why we need to develop time, place, and manner regulation, or TPM regulations for homeless camping. When we need to do it, what the general legal framework is for doing that. You'll see that on the first page, the brief background, there's 4 questions. They answer those questions, just below that, and the short answers. I don't want to assume that everyone understands some of the recent case law associated with the Boise case and others, but they've had a dramatic impact on how local government, even state, is working with the homeless and communities across the state. Additionally, of course, the legislature stepped in as well and further clarified what we need to do, how we can work with our homeless residents. And something that I'll just generally draw your attention to is the need to allow camping. It's not that we're prohibiting it, maybe just prohibiting it during certain hours of the day or certain areas of the community. There is a reasonable standard that needs to be provided, which the state has identified to be at least 8 hours, which will allow someone to sleep in a public place under the framework that we'll develop. So also part of that is campsite removal and the process to notify that individual they need to relocate or remove their camp. There's procedures that we need to develop to go about doing that. And again, it's about the safe, reasonable, dare I say humane nature of doing that, so that we're not requiring them to move and very frequently and create undue burden upon them. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish. The city needs to adopt these regulations by ordinance no later than June 30th, 2023. I have asked the city attorney to assemble these regulations that other cities in the state have prepared. I've got 8 examples. I did not want to give you those today. I was talking with the mayor before the meeting. What I'll do is I'll tables like to solve a lot of problems or condense information in my world. So what I'd like to do is really synthesize this information and provide some concrete options for us on how we regulate the time and the other aspects of these regulations, so that when we have our next meeting, we can really start making some progress. And really, again, that's kind of the purpose of this memo, is to get us briefed on it. With that, again, so that's the June 30 deadline. The implications of not adopting the ordinance by June 30 or before would be that we could not require a homeless individual to relocate or impose such regulations, right? So the final aspect I'll note as to why we're doing this, part of these requirements is that the city has to have a place for homeless individuals to go if we're going to ask them to relocate. And it is by actually no coincidence that the city is building a shelter. Majority of it's for that purpose. Without that shelter, we don't have the ability to effectively regulate camping in our public rights of way. So we are intentional, we are aware, we're trying to comply with the law, but also be respectful of those individuals in our community under the new case law. What's a shelter look like? Where does it look like? Yeah.
Do we have is there a plan in place of what it's gonna, I have no clue what there's.
Oh, yeah.
Anything about what it looks like, or
Yeah,
anything like that, or where it's going.
What's the bed capacity, Nick? I think
it's what, it'd be 24 beds. You're gonna have, I'm looking at Tony.
Actually, 29
29,
unless something
yeah.
has changed.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're looking at, just under a 4,000 square foot building. The property where it'll be constructed will be just west of this Sonic, drive-in.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna have a separate room for men and women. We're also gonna have a room for, a family. I think there might even be 2 rooms for families, if I recall.
There's a men's dorm of about 14 in the last design, what we call women and families dorm of 12, and then we have a dorm of 3, where for mobility restricted, we call it a supportive care. We're not getting too far ahead as to having CNAs or care professionals, but we're trying to design a room for mobility restricted folks that might make it easier for them to access. Yeah.
But to begin with, the funding is not gonna be there to be open 24/7, right?
It is not, nor is it there to be open past the current length of time for the shelter, which is November 15th to March 15th.
From 6 PM to 7 AM?
Yes, ma'am. So right now, even moving into that new facility, it's designed to be a winter shelter with other services that will be occurring year round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll have several offices for supportive services. The thought there is you may have someone from Best Care
Oh, yeah.
come on a some sort of frequently basis and work with clients there. We'll also have a commercial kitchen there so the food can be prepared and served. And so I think part of the shelter isn't just a roof so where people can sleep, it's also making sure they're getting nutrition, regular meals, water.
Laundry services of everyone.
Currently, as it has been conceived, there's laundry that's available for the shelter laundry, but it hasn't been conceived for public, which is something honestly that I'm talking with our shelter coordinator and I'm thinking through.
Thank you.
How do we address that? Is there a creative way to be able to address that, even using other community resources?
Yeah.
We do vouchers for the clothing, wash and dry clothing, along with providing just clothing vouchers. So that's one service as like Lemons we do. So I mean, that from that aspect, we can help out there.
Who's that?
That's Anthony Lansing.
Oh,
Yeah. That's great. Thank you, Anthony.
thank you.
And then, that in a nutshell, it's a brand new building, it'll be constructed. I anticipate the council will award a contractor fairly soon on that. What I'll do after the meeting today is I'll send out a couple of the illustrations of the shelter, if you will, and the site plan. I don't think people want to go through 40 pages of construction plan, so I'll just give you a couple sheets to quickly get an idea of it. If anyone has questions, certainly, shoot them to me and.
Nick's trying to get a slice of that 14 million from the Central Oregon Food for it.
Okay, thank you.
So, and I may be way off base here, but, my mind's drawing a blank right now, but the facility that accepts food donations, was that Neighbor Impact, or whatever it is?
There's a couple, yeah.
They're looking, aren't they in that church or something like that?
Yeah, they're looking for people to move to as well.
Have you guys talked to them about making it all one facility? Where they have a space as well, because they want a space for the kitchen as well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm way off base, but like, I know they're looking for money to do that as well, but.
I know that we've been talking about that'd be really cool to put them over there and buy the shelter. Or offering up some property there from that, but That's right now, it's just been discussion on, I don't know, did anybody talk to them about moving there or?
Sheriff Pollock, I don't think it's crazy. I think we have practical limitations as to why we can't. And that being,
Grant.
so we've got
Well,
funding from the state of Oregon that we need to spend by a certain amount of time.
you would need more space as well, because they already say they need 4,000 square feet.
Well, that's, yeah,
Just for what they have.
Yeah, so at one point in time, I was directing, I believe it's Kay, to look at the land directly adjacent to the north. That's being pursued by another entity who actually wants to build affordable housing on it. So that site may not be available, but there's also land to the west that could be located maybe even further north. So you can still be in the very general, maybe vicinity, if you will. But I think the requirement to spend most of the CDBG funding by, seems like the fall of 2024 is the biggest timeline. Because we would need to go through basically the same process we did for the shelter, which is get an architect, design it, develop a construction estimate, select an architect, design it, bid it, go through that process, which, you know, 12 months at least right now. The design community, architects and engineers are very, very busy, unfortunately. So, I think at this point, the opportunity that I see is to maybe locate it within that kind of neighborhood, so it is proximate. So you're not having our homeless, residents having to go from one side of the community to another.
Do they have funding to build?
I think they're working on it, is a thing, and so, I didn't know, you know, somehow you could partner and make it an 8,000 square foot building, where, you know, and it was just, it might be interesting to know, just because, you know, they may have a staff to be able to help out with the food side of providing, you know, meals on a regular basis.
As we understood it earlier, Sheriff, the core part of the funding, the CDBG part of the funding, all the services that are provided there can only be utilized to benefit persons experiencing homelessness in Jefferson County, and it's actually exclusive of the Confederated Tribes because of the duplication as well as the shoots. So the community food pantry actually benefits folks who are not homeless. So to have a co-located activity probably would not fly with the funding, because their services are not focused solely upon homeless. They benefit vulnerable populations, you know, outside of homeless.
Okay.
So it's a funding, I think, challenge, I think.
Yeah, my sense is, based on a conversation we had with COIC staff, is that I think state agency staff are trying to change their mind on this.
Ooh.
Because they have an expectation that a certain number of homeless beds and individuals are gonna be housed and services are provided. And some of these limitations are more, not as helpful as otherwise. So,
Yeah, they are.
that is my opinion, but I do see the writing on the wall.
But it would be great if we could look at other property, if there's any available, by where the shelter is planned to be on.
Nick, can I ask, have we surveyed the area and found out what the estimated homeless population is, and have they broken into families or individuals? Count?
Yes, I have not, seen the 2023 annual point in time count. That occurs every January, I want to say 15th, I could be slightly off. But I don't know if that report's been actually finished and how that has changed over time, although I was at a meeting last week. And they had said that homelessness in Central Oregon had increased something like 40% in the last 24 months. And that actually might even be low. So,
So the question is, and I'm trying to think of all the parts. The city will have facilities with 29 beds. And then what are we gonna do with the rest of them? We're gonna just keep moving them around? I mean, we're gonna craft these ordinances with no camping and we're just gonna move them around? Are we gonna, and then also are we gonna, what's the framework by which, how long they can stay there? What are the conditions? I mean, do they have to be actively seeking improving their life, either healthcare, mental health care, addiction healthcare, looking for employment, trying to improve their skill rates, or are they just gonna to be there? And so then what we do is we rotate them out. Is there a limit of time? And then we try and rotate another population living under the bridge or behind Sonic's in. I mean, it's an overarching thing, because if all we're doing is now we're just moving them around again. And those who are fortunate to be in the shelter, that get to be in the shelter, and those that aren't will be just moved around again. And so you're right, the mayor's right. We're not gonna solve the homeless problem, but moving around doesn't solve it either.
But the
Yeah.
shelter also is just, it's not like they can come in and stay for 4 months. It's a nightly thing. They come in at 6 p.m. and then they leave at 7 a.m. with the breakfast and lunch.
Yeah. So,
And then they have to be out of it.
sure. So is the idea first come, first served?
It is, yeah, due to the operating paradigm. I think, Tim, what you're hitting on, there are other needs in the community as well. And one of the needs that I'm seeing is transitional housing would be a next step, where traditionally it might be run in 10 to 12 week increments, combined intensive, case management with the opportunity to extend folks if they're setting and making progress on certain goals. The shelter and a component of it being the winter shelter in the overall homeless services program, you're absolutely right. It's not solving some of the larger challenges.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to address while it's going in that direction is, Nick, remind me where is it going to be? Because I made a request to ODOT for a traffic study on the north end of town, the south end of town. We're just communicating about it today. We're looking at FARS and PARS data about the number of pedestrians hit. Is this shelter going to be located anywhere near 97 northbound or southbound? Because where it's at, it's close to that. We're going to have, because those folks will, if it's first come, first served, are going to be lining up out there and flocking to that. If they're crossing either northbound or southbound highways, we're going to have to talk about regulated, how to get them across safely without us increasing the number of pedestrians being hit. So that's a concern that I have from a public safety issue, is that like most of you, I've seen a number of cities that have implemented these things, and I know what follows. And so forward thinking is important, because their overall health and safety is just not simply having a place for them to go and sleep. If they can't get safely and they can't get out of there safely, then that can have a potential for an adverse impact on their overall community. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, so again, the site for the shelter is directly west of Sonic, the Sonic Burger. Okay. I would consider that to be adjacent to Highway 97. It might as well be. It's a walk.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. Where they're going to go after they leave the shelter, where are they going to go? They're going to try and go to services and resources. Well, that's going to be east, which is going to bring them right there.
Well, potentially. So
Sure.
the shelter inside of it does have some offices for service providers providing your service there.
Okay.
But to your point about the pedestrian safety, the North White intersection signalized and has some of the best crossings in town.
It's a very, very big intersection, so, and a lot of them actually, in my opinion, don't use it, because, I mean, how many times do you leave the light headed northbound going up 26 by McDonald's, and somebody's trying to cross the street right there, and, we've already had one pedestrian that committed suicide right there, just stepped right out in the middle of traffic. So I don't know how many times I've had to stop in the middle of the road, right by McDonald's, just to let somebody go by, but, I think if that's their common place where they want to cross, talking to ODOT isn't a bad idea. I think that putting in something like we have on the south end of the town with the flashing lights, would greatly benefit slowing people down and going through there so nobody does get hit. So,
And the reason why I bring that up is there's an old military term called the first event, second and third. First event is your primary objective, and that is to be able to help these people. What's the second and third effect? Sometimes it's seen and sometimes it's unseen. And is the second and third event, does it negate first event entirely? You create a problem by trying to fix a problem. So as we move forward as a group, help everybody keep that in mind. So the first effect is to do what we're trying to do, and that's find help for these people. But what's the second and third effect? I mean, so those are things just to consider as we try to put this framework together about moving forward.
Sure, Paul and others. So ODOT is working on their Colfax to Hess project, which supposedly is supposed to start construction in 2026. Part of that project, they will be installing a pedestrian crossing at, I forget the name of the street, in between DHS and Safeway.
Peter,
Thank you.
Is it an overhead?
It's actually not Cedar, just north, next street north. Where we actually had a homeless,
Right,
hit
trying to get to
and
the
killed.
church.
okay.
Yeah, so there will be a crossing there because of that fatality.
Good.
Is it gonna be an overhead, Nick, or are they gonna still have to walk across?
No, it'll be at grade, it'll be the rapid flashing
Sure.
beacon style, which tends to work pretty good when we have them. The other aspect related to transportation, where people go, and I did talk with Cascades Transit, Andrea Bualt, their, manager. I asked her if she would consider allocating funding for a shelter stop at the shelter. So that if they need to go somewhere either within town or even to somewhere else in Central Oregon, they can do that. Just got that feedback recently. I need to connect her and our civil engineer working on the project so they can design that into the planner strip or sidewalk, as the case may be. So,
I was catching what you were saying earlier with regards to the homeless people staying at the emergency shelter during the winter. Most of the people that are homeless here locally that aren't coming through town, they all keep their campsites. So for the most part, I mean, 90% of them, and again, unless they're, just people that are moving through town, staying for a couple of days or whatnot. Most of the people, they go during the day back to their campsites or, wherever they have it, in a lot of cases, it's at the big homeless camp we have. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, they're not getting rid of during the winter. They just maintain during the day and then come stay at the shelter at night, so.
And the shelter's gonna be right by that frequent scan.
Yeah, and that leads to the other thing we're talking about topics of, those we can help that are homeless and those that, that right there, there's a lot, we have to take into account the fact that there's a lot that as we look at homeless, they're not homeless. This is the way they live and, they have no intentions of not living this way, So yeah, there's that huge chunk, which is that portion of the big homeless camp that's the way they live, even offer, a shelter during the day and night, 24 hours a day. They're going to choose to keep camp, keep living in that manner, so.
It's good to see you here. Maybe you
How you
can,
doing?
this on an estimate, how many would you say are homeless that you come across and find as you go out and do the service that you do for the community?
The camp down there, there's probably 40 to 50 that live there, on a regular basis. And then there's a higher, probably upwards of 80 or so, maybe hundreds on really busy days that do foot traffic back and forth through there, and then, yeah, we've just got many camps dotted throughout. We probably have roughly 80 people, living that lifestyle out here.
Sure.
Yeah, all around.
Thank you, appreciate it, I do.
So as the city moves forward in developing the amendment in place regulations, that's something to keep in mind. Are we going to be moving people? Are we going to designate an area that's okay for camping? And what are those hours going to be? Or are we gonna continue to move them? Because it sounds like there's several locations around the community. That's really important to think about. If you would ever want to do a sanctioned camping and just identify one location, and that's the only location that you allow. And then as far as the transitional housing, what I've seen in other communities, I've worked in Sweet Home, they partnered with this high school. And the high school students built these Quonset huts, kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the pallet houses or the small little miniature housing units. And the city identified a site in partnership with the county. The county donated the property. And then it was kind of a managed site. So talking about those additional services that could be, and so that was a higher barrier. You couldn't just, that wasn't a low level barrier. You couldn't just move into that site. You had to abide by a set of rules to be able to participate there. And interesting projects. As you think of different ways that you can help.
That's in being out and talking and working with them on a daily basis for the past couple of years now. I mean, there's something as simple as, and I work this out mentally in regards to what I do. You can literally take pallets and lay out pallets, put them together with half-inch plywood of some type, right? From a 4, two of them together, that's 8 by 8, and just wood frame it with 2x4s or whatnot, the tarps I can get supplied from Brightwood was willing to last year, wrap the, if we're talking about a place where we're gonna figure out where, they can actually, stay or rotationally stay or whatnot, where they can be framed out with the same tarps that Brightwood has. They rip whatever, you just retarp them, reskin them, but then the frame's always there. The other thing it gives you, any water coming through, it allows it to move through whatnot. The usability of disassembling them. It's something as, as simple as that would mean the world to people, someone living in a tent. I mean, most of us can see to the extent of what they're willing to build, just to get comfortable down there. And those are just layers of tarps on each other and stuff, or blankets in between tarps and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, we don't even have to think the major steps. It's the little things at that point that truly help in building someone up too, and the pride in them or instilling that little bit.
Mm-hmm. So who owns the land where the bigger campsites at?
Who owns that part? I'm not quite sure. I know who owns parts of the hills and stuff up, but that section, I'm not even.
I can see.
Yeah.
What Steve was telling me.
Yeah.
My other question is a concern, and I think there's probably some urgency in being able to find some of those folks and to do, as Christie said, and that's fine. A more permanent location for them. Has anybody tested the soil or the water in that creek recently? E. coli is a big deal. If it breaks out, it gets loose. It's going to be a whole community problem. And so I'm saying that, I mean, we just had that flood down there that washed out under the bridge that you and I had a chance to, and said, all that stuff goes with it. And then it saturates the soil, and the soil becomes contaminated, and the cleanup for that becomes monumental in addition to, I mean, summer's coming, little kids are gonna go down there and play, and guess what? If that's there, somehow you're gonna have to contain it or keep people out of it until it's abated. But as I said, when's the last time we've had the water down in that area or, the banks that feed that tested?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been quote tested. Do you know, is there an agency that does that?
DEQ will do it.
Okay.
It's just something that is, and that happens in some of the other cities. They will frequently, when Portland did it, I mean, they had to move them out from the waterfront on Nato Parkway because that ground down there was being contaminated. And so with the public access, hard to keep people out of that. So they started moving people off of it. So just know that's another consideration as we talk about the different options that are available. It doesn't take long. I was here when the Rainbow Family Coalition just went out in the Ocho's and they were there for a week. And they closed that forest down and it did some damage that lasted a decade. And it was E. coli in the soil and in the watershed. So it's like, it needs to be addressed and then we need to find the options or a safe place for them to be. And I agree with you. Those folks, it's like you said, and that's interesting, I thought about the terminology that we use to describe them. That is their home. They don't consider themselves homeless as we would traditionally think of a home. But in the meantime, it doesn't have the necessary services to keep things like that from happening.
And again, doing this now, on a 4x6 trailer, I mean, literally a self-contained, other than just having it evacuated, is portable, handicapped, even accessible, bathroom stall can be made, brought down to the only.
Would they use it regularly?
Oh, 100%, I think they would use it, but beyond that, though, you gotta think of the ramifications. Someone's then gotta watch it, make sure that someone doesn't go at night, try to live in it or sleep in it, or go and lock their door and, so those, I think those things can be mitigated in something as quick as something like that being brought in, to alleviate. Cause yeah, I mean, I take everything from honey buckets out of there, to, again, I know where they use the restrooms down there, each and every one of them, with that many people. I firmly believe there probably is, without the water moving through on a continual basis, there's gotta be something that,
There's the other issues that our agency, we've been down there at least 4 times for fires. That way.
Yeah, that's.
Going down there, and then it creates other hazardous too, because we send crews down to pull people out of there, and it's just not a really ideal environment. Penny, you can chime in on that.
Yeah, sorry. That's kind of one of the things that I was thinking about is, I mean, we're coming into fire season here real quickly. And if we've got these people in a funnel, that's going to become real dangerous real quick, not just for evacuation, but I mean, fire moves quick. So that's something that we need to consider.
Yeah. Hopefully at the end of what we do here is to not only help the homeless in the homeless situation down there, but we have to truly try to open the wider community's eyes up to helping them down there. I love it, people that haven't been down there, went and talked with people, come down, take a walk down there with me. I mean, on a heart-to-heart level, a lot of the people down there and getting a chance to talk to them. And unfortunately, when something like Mr. Pollock goes down, they all kind of pucker up into their own, they then put on that front of who they are, not only in front of the people they're with, but to, like, say, an authority figure, even to the best care people and the EMS people that go down there, everybody gets jaded on one sense or another. And then in that community itself, once that happens so many times, then they look at everybody in authority, as somebody that's immediately looking down upon them. But if we can get the wider community involved here, I think a lot of the things we're going to talk about too can be helped and assisted by the wider community, and thus, opening those doors and avenues to actually helping the people that do want to get lifted up out of the situation down there. Because, like I said, they think of themselves as a community the exact same way we think of ourselves, where we have accidents, fires, stuff like that in our community. Because it happens in the manner it does here in a home with insurance and all that, I hate to say it, I do too, I look at it differently. But in the sense, they look at all that as just another part of living in a community, that they're gonna have those fires, they're gonna have those accidents, Now, albeit down there, you have a higher propensity of it being something alcohol or addiction related, it's still, we end up having to mitigate it the same way we do, in the wider community, so.
Okay,
Christie, if it's okay, I'll work with Public Works and see if they can have you maybe do some same thing.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how the creek flows through there, so
it goes that way.
it'd be helpful to talk to them. I don't know what's downstream, like, is it a place where people generally swim or?
Lakes and Testis, feels like it, Lakes and Testis, down, Issues River.
The Willow.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could be diluted by the time it gets to the end point where there's a lot of people congregating.
It's about 7 miles.
Maybe it's,
Well, my concern is
we
the back.
would post so many miles down the creek, so we don't have that problem with someone using.
And that's spots where the water sits, I mean, it
Right,
literally.
yeah, it's a wetland, all kinds of.
Well, if they don't have a place you know, dedicated.
It's just like a wa- it's a
And we're gonna do it right there in a place where they can find it's, private in the bottom of the creek, just, you know, out of sight most of the time, and so.
The Homeless Services Center has considered this partially in the design there on that west side. There's a bathroom that has been designed that's not going to be in the interior of the facility and then will be able to be open, and it's being designed sort of like a park or a rest stop where it could be power washed and, more easily dealt with from a janitorial perspective. I had no idea that was that many people, so that will create quite a flow, and so there'd be some assistance maybe needed to, maintain that, but there is something that's designed in the southwest corner, I believe, that would be able to be open as much as would be necessary.
We have 10 minutes left into our meeting, and so we know we got some ideas and things that we're gonna look at now.
One thing I did want to report is, so the 14 million that's coming to COIC, that's also for service providers. Okay, and, they did not want to see all the money go to Deschutes County, was the exact term that they used. So, for our service providers, partners here and even not here, please share the word. If they have any questions about that, they can contact me. I can put them in contact with whoever. Should be fairly easy to get this funding as long as you meet the requirements. So it's not some long, exhaustive process.
And so we know we have to work ahead. We know we have some ideas for the next meeting. We can get some ideas or examples for the next ordinance moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to think about when can we meet again. It'd be nice if we had an actual set.
Yes.
Regular schedule. What are the best days there?
The city attorney reported Mondays at 2 p.m. they're available. So maybe for the interim, that might be heavily considered moving forward and we could maybe look at a modified schedule during the summer. I don't know how frequently we need to meet.
Well, we got most of us here today,
Yeah,
Monday at 3.
so
We meet in 2 weeks.
can we meet again on the first? Under the first?
I think that works.
Good for me.
Sure.
What time on the first?
2 o'clock. So that's agreeable with everybody. Let's meet again on Monday the 1st at 2 p.m. Penny, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'll be on shift, but we should be able to work something out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone.
So we'll have the initial discussions, the time, place, and manner regulations, or anything else we need to have on the agenda?
I think that's gonna take up the whole time.
Should, majority of it.
Yeah, get a chance to read it.
Okay. I didn't also want to say.
Okay.
All right, if you have something comes up, maybe let the mayor or I know, and we can work that in.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? All right, well then, thank you everybody for your willingness to participate and your input. So Dr. Becker waiting this. And we'll adjourn the meeting at 2:54.